I'm just going to say it now. You all who have been listening to the show, you are aware that I have undiagnosed some form of dyslexia to where I mean one phrase and another phrase comes out. Well, here is your precursor, if you will, your advisement, because me and Leah also have a history in the youth group Christian scene way back in the day. So if you hear me call this casting crows or counting crowns, you will know what has happened.
It just happened before we hit record. And I was like, we got to put that in the show.
Well, that was intentional. But I guarantee you now it's in my head. Okay. It will be said once or twice.
Counting crows.
Counting crows. Yes, I actually have one. Can you believe it?
Oh, I thought that was going to be the transition to our names, but okay.
Oh, yeah, we could do that. That's fine, too. No, I have a question.
Okay.
We're coming up to, I would like to call it festival season, but it's not really festival. Like, we're getting back into shows.
It's also not even a season. I feel like festivals are starting in March and going to October this year. Like, what the hell?
Yeah, and then there's some festivals which will not be named that are adding third days and only gonna see 5 minutes of a band you like, but
that's TBD if that happens. But anyway, we're entering shows.
We're entering season to watch shows again, as long as everything goes well. What band T-shirts do you want to pick up? Whether you are going to plan on seeing them or not see them, what band T-shirt do you want to pick up this year?
This is a very dumb answer because it's not really a band, but this artist has yet to make merchandise I actually want to wear on my body. I want a damn Taylor Swift shirt. All her shirts are so. It's
the picture of her. It's the album cover.
Yes.
And those are my least favorite shirts because they're the least creative shirts, and they charge $50 for them.
She'll have something really cute, like they just redropped a Lover line for Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
They went back and released more Lover merch. Right. And they have this really cute, it's a pink tie-dyed hoodie that says "You're my lover" and Taylor's handwriting embroidered on it. The thing is $70.
I can give me a Cricut. I'll make it for you.
I could embroider that myself for less money than that. So I do have a red cardigan, but no one, unless you know what it is, you're not like, that's Taylor Swift merch. I just want some Taylor Swift merch that I'll actually wear. Yeah.
No, I agree with that. I am excited to pick back up an Under Oath t-shirt because I'm going to go see them with Spirit Box. Every Time I Die was on that tour list, but they have broken up.
Oh.
There's a lot of controversy going on with them right now. We're not going to get into it. It's a ton of drama. So they added a Stray from the Path, I think, and another band. But anyway, I used to have an Under Oath. I had maybe one or two Under Oath t-shirts. I, for some reason, got rid of them. I don't know why. But my first Amazon order was also an Under Oath poster.
Hilarious.
I went back and looked, and sure enough, 2009, I ordered an Under Oath poster.
That's hilarious.
So I would love a good Under Oath t-shirt again. Josh bought a hat from Under Oath because he's into hats now. And they called it a dad hat, which is just both an offense, but also a fair critique of where the scene is at.
Yeah, they're all dads now.
Yeah. So that is my plan.
Good choice.
And with that, I'm Beth Ann.
And I'm Leah.
And this is She Will Rock You. Where are they getting a dub in a CBS executive meeting?
No. Bitch, don't touch my thermostat.
The ghost be like, hold up, before I haunt you, let me turn down the thermostat. Who is this band?
We're on page 1, guys. This is She Will Rock You. Welcome new listeners, because we have not welcomed new listeners in a very long time. So if this is your first episode, or you're like,
hello,
we're happy to have you here. Thanks for listening to our chaos.
Please stay and continue to listen to our chaos.
Every episode is a wild ride. Anyway, today we are talking about counting crows. And this was not originally my plan, but I'm still debating whether I want to do the original artist that I picked.
Yeah.
Because they had some pretty insane sexual assault allegations that they pled guilty to. I'm not going to name them in case I end up doing them later, but we pinned that one because I was not in the mood to do that. So I was like, what is a band that I can do that isn't going to have all this drama attached to them? And my way of choosing was I went to Spotify and I found a rock playlist. I started scrolling and I was like, Counting Crows. And here we are.
May I just say, stark difference from your original choice?
Yes.
It's like very stark difference, but I'm sure will be a much better episode, happier episode than the one you were previously planning.
The only thing that I'm not really going to touch on, but some people have issue with Counting Crows, is lead singer Adam Duritz for a very long time, like up until last year, had dreadlocks.
Yes.
But he's white. But like, I mean, that was just a 90s thing, to be honest. It was very much he lived in Berkeley, California, and that was the thing. Yeah. It doesn't seem, from what I can tell, that there's not a whole lot of like hate for him online, because he didn't do it from a place of like, I'm cool, I have dreadlocks. He was just like, this is the style. Because
if it's Berkeley, I mean,
everyone there was just smoking weed and had dreadlocks.
Well, I mean, a lot of bands coming out of there, like Korn at some point had dreadlocks. I forgot about that. They're from Bakersfield. Yeah. POD had it. They're from, I think, Bakersfield or somewhere. No, they're from Anaheim. So that was a 90s cult. Like I think Zach De La Rocha had dreadlocks at some point. Yeah. So it is a cultural thing of the 90s. I am glad the conversation is coming out. Like, hey guys, that may have not been the coolest. It may have been cultural appropriation. So I appreciate the conversation. We can look back. It happened, but
he actually had a nervous breakdown in 2019 and shaved them off, so he no longer has dreadlocks. But let us go back to the beginning in the Berkeley, California beginnings, where we meet Adam Duritz. He grew up in Berkeley, California. There is not a lot of information about his early life. It kind of just picks up when he got into music. So by the mid-'80s, he dropped out of college and decided to pursue music full-time and joins a band called the Himalayas.
Welcome to the Himalayas!
John Ratzenberger was there playing a Yeti. And let's keep in mind that this is the mid to late 80s, and they're trying to make it in the same scene as the scene that Green Day and Primus are getting started in.
It was a nice idea, guys. Very nice idea.
California is hot. It's like the 80s glam metal revolution all over again, where I guess on any given night you could listen to
the punk underscene of that time. Forget it.
You were going to have a great night wherever you went.
Yeah.
And so he spends several years jumping from one band to another. He'll like meet a friend who plays guitar, and they'll play coffee shops and bars, and then that doesn't really go anywhere, so he'll meet another friend who plays guitar, and they'll play coffee shops and bars. And you know, a couple years of that, and he gets to the point where he just like gets really frustrated that he's not making it and not going anywhere, and watching these other bands that are playing the same scenes as them make it big. And so he starts to write these songs about like his inner turmoil that are like really vulnerable songs and really personal songs. And he ends up meeting David Bryson, who goes on to be in Counting Crows, and the two of them keep making this coffee shop circuit. And they kind of like the thing that they have going on. They clicked really well. They wrote really well together. And so in early 1991, David and Adam asked Matt Malley, Steve Bowman, and Charlie Gillingham to help them record a demo. They also invite another friend, guitarist David Immergluck, who has the coolest last name, Immergluck, who he would play with them from time to time. He, at this point, and for the next couple years, like the next 20 years, he's not an official member of the group. He just would like bounce in, do some sessions, or cover a show here or there, and bounce out. And therefore, Counting Crows was hatched. Which they ended up dubbing themselves.
And I'll praise you in this storm. And I'm
realizing now that I forgot to read my intro quote, which is really good. So we're going to read it now. This is how the VH1 Behind the Music special starts. The history of rock and roll is littered with heartbreaking stories of tragedy and failure. And then there's the Counting Crows.
VH1 Behind the Music gives no fucks.
I love it so much.
They give not a single fuck about your thoughts.
If there is not a VH1 special when I pick an artist, I'm sad about it.
Yes.
Because it's not as fun. Anyway, so Counting Crows is hatched. They like loved playing together. This like demo group. They didn't really get together the intention of starting a band, more just like, let's let Adam cut this demo that he wants to cut. But they had fun doing it, so they gave him a name. The name of the band derives from a British nursery rhyme called One for Sorrow, which is like a superstitious nursery rhyme about counting magpies, which are basically crows. Adam Duritz first heard the rhyme in the film Signs of Life, which he was really good friends at the time with Mary Louise Parker, who's in that movie. Mm-hmm. And if anyone's curious, here's the modern version of that nursery rhyme. 1 for sorrow, 2 for joy, 3 for a girl, 4 for a boy, 5 for silver, 6 for gold, 7 for a secret never to be told, 8 for a wish, 9 for a kiss, 10 for a bird you must not miss. Not that deep of a nursery rhyme, but you know,
that's what gets the creative juices flowing.
If you're counting crows, then that's up to you. He actually went on to feature this rhyme later in their career, or not, I say later, it was like the same year, in their song A Murder of One, which is on their debut album.
That's creative because it's crows.
Yeah. He is Adam Duritz gets a lot of shit. Counting Crows, which we'll get to, is a band that people have to hate on for no reason. They're kind of like Nickelback before they were Nickelback. Like, people just shit on Counting Crows for literally no reason. Adam Duritz is a genius lyricist.
Yeah.
But we'll get there. So at this point, they're just like 6 dudes and some instruments. They have no manager, no record label, and so they just make a bunch of copies of their demo and mail them out to people. And they said it got to the point that they would call up radio stations to say, hey, can we send you a demo? And they'd say, oh, no, I already got it from my friend Joe. Like, he gave me a copy. Because people were making their own copies and giving it to their friends because they loved it so much, which is totally a 90s thing. It's so funny. Mm-hmm. And then when I say demo tape, I mean literal cassette tape. The manager, their current manager at the time when this VH1 special was made, still had the original cassette tape that he mailed to them.
Aww.
Because he was so like impressed with what he heard that he kept it. I love
that.
Their manager, you could tell their manager, I forget his name because they only showed it that one time. You could tell their manager really loved working with them and like really believed in what they were doing. So that strategy did work. They landed some management, and in February of 1992, their management invited a bunch of record label executives to watch the band perform at this tiny club in San Francisco called the I-Beam. So they invited like 20-something labels. 10 showed up, and the morning after the show, 9 of them made offers.
Wow. Holy cow.
Yeah.
Opposite Alanis Morissette.
Yes. So after like spending some time weighing these offers, I keep saying like, and I hate that, but it's a San Francisco thing, right? We're in the Valley. I don't know. Is San Francisco in the Valley? I know nothing about California geography.
Just roll with it.
I'm an East Coast girl. So they weigh all the offers and spend a couple days, I think, doing that. They end up settling with Geffen Records because they had Guns N' Roses and Nirvana on their roster at the time.
Yeah.
Prospects were high. So the band moves into a house in San Francisco. They rent out the entire house, and they start working in a studio with producers to really hone in on their sound because they kind of just came together and made this demo and didn't really have a plan beyond that.
Yeah.
They didn't have anything nailed down.
His goal was to become famous.
Yeah, that's it.
That was it. And then he got there and he was like, all right.
He's like, okay, we got to deal. Now what? We got to actually make some music. So they work with these producers to figure out exactly what their sound is, polish up the demos that they made. And they do this polishing process for 9 months. They go through all these different phases and different processes. And eventually they just actually decided they needed to play as simply and little as possible to just let Adam shine through and his story that he's doing shine through. And pretty quickly after that, in the fall of 93, they released their debut album, August and Everything After. And they've been playing some shows around to, practice and figure out their sound. And based on that live performance, everyone kind of thought, oh, this is going to be like a classic rock Jim Morrison, Bob Dylan sound. And And they were wrong because they're inspired by those bands.
Yeah.
But they're not quite those bands. No. August and Everything After is not a Bob Dylan album. Like, it's pretty different. And so by the time this album drops, no one really knows what to do with it. The record label doesn't know what to do with it or how to promote it. They didn't even bother to drop a single.
Wow.
But by some crazy just phenomenon, people start doing what they do with the demo tape, and like they share it with their friends, and that friend shares it with a friend.
That was a big thing in the punk underground.
And it got to the point where it wasn't getting radio play because they didn't do a single, but people are sharing the record with each other, and they start touring. They start touring literally just like dive bars. And radio DJs would come to those dive bars and be like, oh my God, this is the coolest thing I've ever heard. Can I play this on the radio? And so they started to play it on these tiny little college radio stations. Then it got to the small town radio stations. Then it got to the bigger regional radio stations. And all of this is not because a single has been promoted. It's because DJs are going to the live shows and having their minds blown. The former executive of Geffen, John Sykes, is interviewed in the VH1 special, and he was like, when we first tried to drop them, or to break them, they were too old for teen-driven top 40, but too young for the classic rock stations, so they didn't even know where to promote them. And it's getting some radio play, but, it's like college radio stations. It's nothing that's going to change the world. So Mr. Sykes calls up a friend that he has at SNL and tells him about the band. And a month later, they play on that show for the entirety of the United States. One of the songs they play is Mr. Jones and Me, which is just the time I'm going to use to say what it's about. Adam wrote this song when he was in the Himalayas, or he wrote it about a guy who was in the Himalayas with Marty Jones. And it just is a song about wanting to be a musician and make it big, and what's going to happen when we get famous? Like, what's it going to be like?
It's interesting. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. You're on your point.
Ironic, considering what's about to happen to them. They play SNL, and suddenly things go out of control. Mr. Jones and Me jumps 40 spots a week on the Billboard chart.
Shit.
For the next 5 weeks. Over the course of 5 weeks, it goes from number 200 to number 4. And 6 months later, they sold 1 million records.
Holy shit. Because SNL, if you wanted to make it big, that's where you go.
It's so weird. It used to be a place. It was basically the Ed Sullivan Show for the 80s and early 90s. Like, you would go on there if you were trying to make it big. Whereas now I feel like you have to be big enough to even play on SNL.
Yeah. Like, usually the people who go on SNL, you have to reach you either have to be big or you're about to be big. And like, they kind of know when an artist is about to be big. Yeah. It's not a chance thing anymore.
Olivia Rodrigo got to play because she just exploded out of nowhere.
Yeah. Lizzo, whenever she just had the song Juice out, she played it. That was Jimmy Fallon, but still, the point remains. She played it on Jimmy Fallon, and then a few weeks later, she was big. Yeah, but she was already on her way up.
So, this record earned them the nickname "Accounting Crows" at Geffen because it made the company so much money.
I love that.
And in all the interviews around this time, or looking back at this time, they say that it was so surreal and they didn't expect it to happen, that the whole time they felt it was happening to someone else because they just couldn't wrap their minds around it, because they didn't have this typical band struggle of, grinding for 8 years before they get their big break. Right. They're pretty much an overnight success. Yeah. Because of one performance on SNL. And so by spring 1994, the album is selling 1 million records a month, which is unreal. A month. Jeez. The band clearly had to tour because they're hot right now. So they tour pretty extensively in 93 and 94, both headlining their own shows and supporting other artists such as the Rolling Stones, the Cranberries, Los Lobos, and Bob Dylan.
Holy shit. Good names.
Not small shows either, I'm sure. And Adam starts to get really worried about this fame because he doesn't want to be another act that just rises to fame really quickly and then burns out. So instead of, doing something to prevent that, he just shuts down everything for the album, for August and everything after. No more singles, no more videos. He was so scared they get overexposed. And he was like, no more, guys. You cannot promote this album anymore. They'd even already made a video for Round Here, and he refused to let them put it out because he didn't want any more attention on him or the band.
I mean, that's one way to do it, I guess.
You do risk, at that point in history, there was very much a risk of overexposure.
Yeah.
Because there wasn't a lot of alternative. Like now, it's the same 40 songs on the radio, but if you don't want to listen to Top 40 radio, you don't have to listen to Top 40 radio.
Yeah. More of a risk to get sick of a song.
Yeah.
And then you get sick of the artist.
Yeah, because, you only have so many things to listen to on the radio. They finished touring the album, and they come back home to San Francisco, and they were all burnt out and freaked out because they did not expect it to go 0 to 100 like this.
Yeah.
And so they start fighting. But pretty quickly, they realized that all the fights centered around one person, and that is drummer Steve Bowman.
Uh-oh.
They deduced that 5 out of the 6 times there was a fight, Steve was involved. So in 94, Steve leaves the band, and they replace him with Ben Mize, who had 12 hours to get himself together, quit his job, quit his band he was working on, and play for 8,000 people on the first night.
Jeez.
But he nailed it. He clicked with the band immediately, and they loved him. So he got the job. Sorry to his old band. In 1995, Adam goes back home to Berkeley. They toured a little bit more at this point. They got a new drummer. And he tries to blend in. But everyone knows who he is at this point. He has a very distinctive hairstyle, too, which is not helping. And he suffered a nervous breakdown because it got to the point where kids were camping in his front yard. He couldn't go to the grocery store without being recognized. Like, he was just getting mobbed all the time.
Yeah.
So he moves to LA.
Oh, because that makes sense.
Where he can blend in.
Well, that's true.
Everyone's famous in LA. Yeah. Or at least they aren't like, oh my God, you're famous person. Can I touch you? Which freaked him out. So he moves to LA, and for a sense of normalcy, he starts bartending at the Viper Room.
Oh, jeez.
And he loved it because he was just a normal dude behind a bar working a normal job. But
a very famous room, like a very famous bar.
Yeah. He probably wouldn't, I don't know if he would have got that job if he wasn't Adam Duritz, but
Yeah.
It is what it is. But it gives him a chance to like calm down, lay low for a while, and like reevaluate. By winter 1995, he's like shunned the music scene. He doesn't want to be a part of it during this time. And for a man who's trying to avoid attention, he does a really good job of bringing attention on himself. Because he starts to date famous actresses such as Jennifer Aniston and Courtney Cox.
That will do it.
So he ends up in all the gossip magazines, all the gossip newspapers.
He also happened to be dating like 2 of the biggest stars due to Friends.
And because of that, the media and the tabloids were not very nice to him because he's not a traditionally attractive, Brad Pitt type. Mm-hmm. So they're really mean to him, and they're like, how in the world did this guy get Courtney Cox? What's he hiding? And
90s tabloids, man. Maybe
he's just sensitive because he writes really vulnerable lyrics.
Yeah.
Maybe that's it. But that doesn't do much to help him lay low. He eventually stopped writing music, and his bandmates would call him and be like, hey, man, let's go write some stuff together. Let's go play around. And he'd just say, I'm not in a band right now.
Holy shit. So he's really going through something.
Yeah. So I in 2018, I think it's 2018 and 2008, he ends up getting diagnosed with dissociative identity disorder.
Yeah.
So this whole time it feels like all this is happening to someone else. He's just observing, which he eventually writes about and makes sense of later in life. But this time he has no clue what's happening. He's just like, I'm done being famous. Goodbye. But eventually he does come around and it decides it's time to make more music. And so they do what they do best. The band rented another house and set up to work on their sophomore album, which would become Recovering the Satellites. And this, where Mr. Jones and Me was very much a like hopeful, optimistic, what's it going to be like to be famous song, This is very much an introspective, oh shit, I'm famous album.
Yeah.
So the album contains lyrics such as, these days I feel like I'm fading away, like sometimes when I hear myself on the radio, from Have You Seen Me Lately? And in the song Recovering the Satellites, he writes, gonna get back to basics, guess I'll start it up again. It's since its release, it's been described as a concept album of sorts, trying to pick up the pieces of a family, a social life, and a psyche shattered by fame. And it doesn't go over well because people don't want to hear you complain about being famous.
It's somber.
Well, people don't want to hear you complain about being famous.
Yeah, exactly.
It actually gets him a pretty bad reputation. In a 2021 interview with the Grammys, the interviewer asked him, my view is that you guys are a great American rock band, full stop. Maybe the only true artistic successor to Van Morrison. But you said there was a point that the people have viewed the band as a joke. Why do you think that was? And this was Adam Duritz's response. Because you annoy the shit out of people when you're really successful. On the very simplest level, having massive success on the radio means that they'll play you every hour, and that will annoy the fuck out of people. After a while, it's like, I don't want to hear the same shit in my car every day. They're not trying to sustain your career. It's the radio's business to play what people want to hear so they get advertising dollars. So yeah, too much success doesn't really breed more of it all the time. There were years when we didn't have reviews of live shows or records. They were like, here's Adam whining again while he's fucking famous chicks. That just became the narrative. And then it kind of cleans itself up and rehabs itself. Nobody goes 30 years and stays beloved. It's impossible. Which is so interesting and so opposite of the trajectory that a lot of bands we've talked about have.
Yeah.
They have a very long rise to fame, and they generally are beloved. But Counting Crows just got shat on for being famous.
Right. And I think for him, to get my armchair therapist out, I think part of the issue is because he shot up to fame, he didn't have that opportunity. With these bands are in long haul, they see that gradual rise.
Yeah.
So it gives them more sustainability to their career, so to speak, where they can actually have the appropriate matured emotions to deal with it. But when you shoot up that fast, you can't process it. The brain just breaks down. And I mean that it's just so hard to process all that information.
It was a lot for them. This is the album that has Long December, which is my favorite Counting Crows song, and the time in which I'm going to insert the first time I heard Counting Crows. So my father, my biological father, who, if you're listening to this, maybe try calling me instead of listening to this podcast.
Shit. Yeah, what she said.
But
I'm her best friend, bub.
He showed me A Long December. I was I think it was probably in 7th or 8th grade, maybe 6th grade. He was showing me songs to put on my iPod because, diversify my music taste. And he showed me it and started making fun of it because there's the line, the smell of hospitals in winter. And he's into music, but you can definitely tell he's not into lyrics because he thought that was the funniest line ever. And I'm sitting there thinking, I don't know, I kind of like these lyrics. These are kind of good lyrics. And then I went on to listen to it a billion times on my iPod.
I'm not saying that's a character study based off our private conversations, but that's a character study.
It's a character study. So Long December, probably, I don't know, there's a debate I'm learning in the Counting Crows fandom, whether Long December or Mr. Jones and Me is their most beloved song. Mm-hmm. It's up in the air. I personally like Long December better, but that is me. That was a side rant that had nothing to do with this album, but that was the first time I heard Counting Crows, and I pretty much only knew August and everything after, and Long December until I started this research. Adam Duritz is a genius. Lyrics are incredible. Really fucking sad songs to a really upbeat melody. They're sad bops.
sad boy music before there was sad boy music.
Exactly. And they didn't really fit in that grunge scene. Their first album came out, I think, 6 weeks after In Utero came out. Very different.
Yeah. Counting Crows is a hard box. Because they don't really fit in a genre.
Yeah, they've got grunge influences, but they've also got Americana influences.
Yeah. And I think in the 90s, that didn't bode as well. It was a harder sell at that point, where today you can get away with it more.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot of genre bending happening.
No, not like it is today, because there's so many playlists on Spotify.
Yeah.
You can fit into so many different categories.
So to round out people saying Adam was complaining, he says, I guess you can call it whining, but for me it's about art, and art is about expressing yourself. So fuck the haters. To promote this album in 1997, they go on a co-headlining tour with the Wallflowers. That would continue through September. But after 9 months of constant touring to support this album, Adam developed nodules on his vocal cords in July and had to cancel like 2 months worth of gigs. That'll mess you up.
Yeah.
You don't want those to rupture. So good call on suspending your shows. He eventually did recover. Like, he's fine now vocally. In 1999, they performed at Woodstock 99. If you want to hear about that shit show, go back one episode.
Yes.
We literally just talked about it. I won't share any other Woodstock stories. I just think it's funny they were there because they were on the same day as Metallica.
It's an odd mix.
But later that year, they released This Desert Life, which features the songs Hanging Around and Colorblind. Colorblind was featured in the movie Cruel Intentions, which was a very large movie that year, so it helped them push album sales. And this is the point in time where at 1999, 2000-ish, they finally invite David Immergluck to join the band as an official member.
He never got the invite?
No.
So he's just there?
It took 7 years. Now, he's just been bouncing back and forth. He played on every Counting Crows album as a sideman, but he kept declining a permanent position because he had other stuff he wanted to do. But finally, he joined the band.
Good for him.
And he joins, and he actually plays, he's still there, I think. He plays acoustic guitar, electric guitar, pedal steel guitar, slide guitar, and mandolin, as well as
one to keep
background vocals. So he is important. He's been doing it the whole time. He just never toured with them.
Yeah.
They released their fourth album, Hard Candy, in 2009. And this got a lot better reviews than their last couple. It had more, quote, radio-friendly songs, which American Girls is one of them and features Sheryl Crow on background vocals.
Oh, that's nice.
Midway through the Hard Candy tour, second drummer, Ben Mize, amicably left the band. He just left in the middle of the tour to go spend more time with his family. Weird to do that in the middle of a tour. I think there's probably more there, but that's me reading into it. So he completed the American leg, and before they went overseas, they replaced him with Jim Bogie. I don't know how to pronounce his name. No one ever said it in the documentary. But he was a former drummer for Sheryl Crow. So I'm going to guess they met him when they met Sharon. I don't know. In 2004, they had a little song called Accidentally in Love on the Shrek 2 soundtrack.
I remember that song.
It was nominated for an Oscar.
I remember.
For Best Original Song, but lost to Al Otro Lado Del Rio from the Motorcycle Diaries. But honestly, which one do we remember more?
Accidentally in Love. I'm accidentally in love.
Accidentally in Love.
Well, that was a good song.
It was a good. The Shrek soundtracks had no need to go as hard as they did.
But they did it for us.
They did it for us.
Random story. First Shrek album. Who Let the Dogs Out?
I forget that's in there all the time.
It's in there. My grandmother fell in love with that song. And she would call me, okay, on the landline. And she'd go, who let the dogs out? Woof, woof. Woof, woof.
Aww.
She's the sweetest thing. The sweetest thing.
I remember All Star was in there, and they had the music video on the DVD.
Yeah, we all know All Star because it's the most memeable, but Baha Men was there.
Yes, but they had the music video, a Shrek music video to All Star on the DVD that you could watch over and over and over and over. And whenever I was at my best friend's house, we would put on socks and like run and slide and like spin to that song on the DVD. We probably did it like 50 times.
I love that.
Shrek. That shaped our generation.
It did. I remember that DVD too. Like I did a sleepover and we watched that.
That's when DVD menus went hard and they were like super themed.
Sometimes there was a game in there.
Or a hidden Easter egg. Like you could select that one fence post that would take you to Yes.
I loved stuff like that.
How far society has fallen.
Ugh.
So they kind of don't do much after Shrek for 2-ish years. But in 2006, Duritz starts hinting in interviews that the next Counting Crows album was coming. And they had spent 3 weeks working in a recording studio with Gil Norton, who had last produced Recovering the Satellites for them, and revealed that the title of the album would be Saturday Nights and Sunday Mornings, because Saturday night is when you sin and Sunday is when you regret it. Sinning is often done very loudly, angrily, bitterly, violently. Which I don't have much to say about that album, but I just loved that reason behind that album name. That actually did not release in 2007 and wound up releasing on March 25th, 2008. On August 8th, 2007, that's a lot of numbers, VH1 filmed a live performance of Mr. Jones for the mini-series 100 Greatest Songs of the 90s. That song ranked number 27 on the list, which is pretty high.
That is pretty high.
Out of 100. In 2000, this is the most random point that really has nowhere to go, so I'm just putting it in here chronologically. In 2008, a guy named Virgil Griffith, who is a software application writer, so like a code bro, he conducts a study in which he took the 10 highest favorite music options from Facebook for about 1,300 colleges and cross-referenced them with the average SAT score for each college. Counting Crows was one of the top artists. The other top artists include Sufjan Stevens, Guster, and U2.
Not a single one of those surprises me.
Nerd music. In 2014, they released what would be their last album for a while, called Somewhere Under Wonderland. And then they all just kind of go off and work on personal projects. They've been doing, the Counting Crows grind for a while. It's time to take a break. Mm-hmm. During this break, Adam Duritz buys 3 wineries in Napa.
This gentleman, I mean this with absolute respect, he's having some crises in his life.
He is. He really is. This is about the time he got diagnosed with borderline dissociative disorder.
It's good because then he can, it's good when you recognize those
level
things.
Himself. So I said he became an investor in 3 wineries. If anyone's curious, they're the Elise Winery, Institution Winery, and Addix, ADDAX Winery. In February 2018, Duritz started his own podcast called The Underwater Sunshine Podcast, which is a weekly music podcast with music journalist James Campion. So they've been quiet for a long time. They're not working on a whole lot of new projects. But in fall of 2019, he starts telling people that they had started writing new music that past August. And in February 2020, he's like, hey, you know what? We're actually going to release a new project. It's going to be these suites of music that'll be released across various EPs. And so they start studio sessions in late February, early March 2020.
Uh-oh.
And then, bam, pandemic. So they can't tour. They can't go to the studio. They have to take a hiatus.
Yeah. He
takes a hiatus from his podcast. So what do you think he does to fill his time?
Video games. Twitch streaming.
He begins hosting cooking videos on his Instagram stories.
That's close enough.
He would do like interviews and I guess a duo live with Chef Tyler Florence. And he said that the type of research that he would do either for his music or for the podcast turned into exploring more about food and cooking to share with others.
Aww,
which I think is cute. He eventually resumed producing the Underwater Sunshine podcast in May of 2021 because, at that point, we're all still looking for things to do.
Right.
And out of all of this, I'm assuming this is why their new album is called what it is his cooking journey, because they ended up naming their EP that came out in May 2021 Butter Miracle Sweet 1. I have nothing to back up that's why it's called the Butter Miracle, but I'm gonna believe that's why it's called the Butter Miracle.
That's probably a good assumption. Joanna, that's my niece, and I know you listen to this, and you are awesome, and you're one of the joys of my life. But stop texting me, girl.
It's okay. We're almost done. So this EP marked the end of a 7-year hiatus for the band, and they've already started teasing that a second EP, Butter Miracle Sweet 2, will be released sometime 2022, we believe. Who the hell knows the way the music industry is working. But the two sweets will come together to form a full album, The Butter Miracle. And that is Counting Crows. Their legacy is pretty much that people hate on them for no reason, and it's not fair. Just because you were annoyed by them in 1993 doesn't mean you need to shit on them now.
Correct.
I heard someone on a podcast that I listened to describe their music as CVS core. And I hate that, but it's very accurate.
But that's good, though.
You hear Mr. Jones and me while you're waiting for your prescription.
Yes.
It's not a bad thing. Yeah, check out, if you haven't listened to Counting Crows, because I feel like unless your parents were very into 90s music, you probably don't know Counting Crows if you're our age. I hope you do. I really hope you do. But then again, we have friends who don't know who Fleetwood Mac was. Correct. So I'm not going to assume.
If they don't know Fleetwood Mac, what are the odds?
I'm not going to assume anyone out there has heard anything. So check out Counting Crows.
Thank you for listening. You can leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Good Pods. Special thanks to Death of Fawn for our intro riff. You can visit our website at she'llrockyou.com. There you'll find socials, show notes, contact us, and our merch. Other than that, don't do drugs.
Don't do drugs.